You'll never be great. Kids like you don't go anywhere in life." The classroom fell silent. Every student turned toward the teacher, their eyes wide with shock. Maya sat frozen in her chair, her brown hands clenched into fists beneath the desk. She could feel her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Her teacher, Ms. Calloway, smirked as she leaned against her desk. "Why are you even trying, Maya? People like you should know their place." Gasps filled the room. No one could believe what they had just heard. But before Maya could even process the insult, before she could speak a word in her defense, someone walked into the classroom. A man, tall, familiar. The students' jaws dropped. Ms. Calloway's face was drained of color. It couldn't be. LeBron James was standing in the doorway. What was he doing here? And more importantly, what was he about to say? Maya wasn't used to being the center of attention, but in Ms. Calloway's class, she always felt like she was under a microscope. The teacher's eyes would linger on her longer than they did on the other students, and Maya had lost count of how many times her assignments were accidentally graded unfairly. She had learned to ignore it. Until today. It all started with a simple classroom discussion. Ms. Calloway was talking about goals, what the students wanted to be when they grew up. One boy said he wanted to be an astronaut. Another girl wanted to be a scientist. When it was Maya's turn, she smiled proudly and said, "I want to be a basketball player." Laughter rippled through the class. Maya's smile faded. She wasn't sure if they were laughing at her or with her. But then she saw the look on Ms. Calloway's face. Pure disgust. "Basketball?" Ms. Calloway scoffed. "Oh, Maya, let's be realistic. That's not the kind of career for someone like you." Maya frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Ms. Calloway said, "people like you don't have the discipline. They don't have the work ethic. You should probably aim for something easier." The class fell silent. Some students looked down at their desks, too uncomfortable to speak up. Others looked at Maya with pity. Maya's hands trembled. But what about LeBron James? Ms. Calloway rolled her eyes. "LeBron James? Oh, please. Do you think you'll ever be like him? Don't kid yourself, Maya. You don't have the talent, and honestly, kids like you don't get those kind of opportunities." Maya felt something burn her chest, a mixture of anger and sadness. She wanted to say something. She wanted to scream, but she didn't, because she knew it wouldn't matter. Ms. Calloway had already made up her mind about her. But what she didn't know was that Maya had a secret, a connection she had never spoken about before, a connection to LeBron James. And today, that secret was about to come out in the most unexpected way. The entire classroom stared at the towering figure in the doorway. LeBron James crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. He had heard everything. Miss Calloway swallowed hard. "And Mr. James, what are you doing here?" LeBron's gaze shifted to Maya, then back to the teacher. His voice was calm but firm. "I came to check on my little cousin." The classroom exploded into whispers. Maya's mouth dropped open. Miss Calloway looked like she had seen a ghost. LeBron James was Maya's cousin, and he had just heard everything she said. Miss Calloway's face turned pale as a sheet. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. LeBron James took a step forward, his eyes locked on her. The room was so silent you could hear a pin drop. Every student sat frozen in their seats, staring at one of the greatest basketball players of all time standing in their classroom. And he was looking directly at their teacher, the same teacher who had just humiliated Maya. "You want to explain what I just heard?" LeBron's deep voice cut through the silence like a knife. Ms. Calloway stammered, her hands shaking. I didn't mean it like that." LeBron raised an eyebrow. "Didn't mean what exactly?" "'Cause from where I was standing, it sounded a lot like you were tearing down a little girl's dreams." The class gasped again. Some of the kids started whispering. Maya just sat there, staring, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. She had never told anyone about her connection to LeBron. She didn't want special treatment. She wanted to make it on her own. But right now, watching her teacher squirm under her cousin's intense gaze, she couldn't help but feel a little satisfaction. Miss Calloway forced a nervous laugh. "Mr. James, I was just trying to be realistic with Maya. Basketball is a tough career path. I didn't want her to get her hopes up for something so unreachable." LeBron folded his arms. "Unreachable?" He glanced at Maya. "You think she can't make it?" Ms. Calloway hesitated. She looked around the room, realizing there was no way out of this. Finally, she sighed. Look, we all know the statistics. Most kids don't make it to the NBA. And let's be honest, her kind. She stopped mid-sentence. But it was too late. The damage was done. The entire class inhaled sharply. Some students covered their mouths in shock. Others just stared, their eyes darting between Lebron and their teacher, waiting to see what would happen next. LeBron James laughed. A low, humorless chuckle. Her kind, he repeated, shaking his head. You're talking to a black man who grew up in Akron, Ohio. Single mother. No money. You really want to go there with me? Miss Calloway had nothing to say. LeBron leaned down, placing his hands on Maya's desk. Listen to me, Maya. You hear me? Maya nodded, her throat too tight to speak. People are always going to doubt you. They're always going to tell you what you can't do. But guess what? He straightened up, looking around the class. They don't decide your future. You do. Maya felt tears sting her eyes. LeBron turned back to Ms. Calloway. You're supposed to be an educator. You're supposed to lift these kids up, not tear them down. But instead, you're pushing your own biases on them. That's not teaching. That's poison. Ms. Calloway's face was bright red now. I didn't mean... LeBron cut her off. Save it. He looked at the class. You all deserve better than this. And with that, he turned back toward the door. Come on, Maya, he said over his shoulder. We're leaving. Maya's eyes widened. Wait, what? You're not staying in this classroom another second. Maya hesitated. She looked around. Some of the kids were staring at her with awe. Others, like Jacob, one of the few kids who always stood up for her, gave her a small nod of encouragement. But then, something happened that no one expected. Ms. Calloway snapped. You can't just take her out of my class, she shouted, her voice full of desperation. She needs to be here. She belongs here. LeBron stopped in his tracks. Slowly, he turned around. Oh, he said coolly. And why is that? Ms. Calloway hesitated. But then, under her breath, she muttered something. Maya heard it. LeBron heard it. The whole class heard it. Because kids like her don't deserve to be anywhere else. The classroom erupted. Gasps. Shouts. Someone even screamed. Oh my God, did she really just say that? Maya felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. LeBron lost it. He stormed forward so fast that Ms. Calloway actually stumbled back. His face was a mask of anger, but his voice was deadly calm. Say that again. Ms. Calloway opened her mouth, then shut it. LeBron took a deep breath, then turned to the students. All of you, listen up. He pointed to Ms. Calloway. You just witnessed exactly why racism is still alive in places it shouldn't be. People like her. Ms. Calloway flinched. You think this is over? LeBron continued. You think you can get away with saying things like that in a classroom? He pulled out his phone. Let's see what the school board has to say about this. Ms. Calloway's face dropped. No, please, she stammered. LeBron held up a hand. Save it. You already said enough. And with that, he pressed a button on his phone. Maya's stomach flipped as she realized what was happening. LeBron James was calling the school board. Right in front of everyone. Ms. Calloway's career? It was over. Ms. Calloway's face went from red to white in a matter of seconds. No, please. Mr. James, let's be reasonable, she stammered, her voice shaking. There's no need to involve the school board. This was just a misunderstanding. LeBron ignored her. He held the phone to his ear. Yeah, I need to speak to the superintendent, he said, his voice calm but firm. I'm at Westwood Middle School, and there's a serious issue with one of the teachers here. Ms. Calloway's hands flew to her mouth. She looked around the classroom desperately, as if hoping someone would come to her defense. But no one did. The students were still in shock. Some of them sat frozen. Others whispered to each other, but not one of them spoke up for her. Even the kids who had once laughed along with her subtle jabs at Maya now stared at her with disgust. Maya, for her part, could barely believe what was happening. Her whole life, she had been told to ignore comments like this, to let it go, to be the bigger person. But LeBron wasn't letting it go. And for the first time, someone was standing up for her in a way she never imagined. LeBron paced slowly to the front of the classroom as he spoke. Yeah, I can hold, he said into the phone. He then turned to Ms. Calloway. Misunderstanding, huh? He let out a short, humorless laugh. Tell me, what exactly did I misunderstand? The part where you told a little black girl she wasn't good enough? Or the part where you made it clear she didn't belong? Miss Calloway's lips trembled. I was just... Lebron shook his head. You think this is the first time she's had to deal with this? The first time you've done this? Maya swallowed hard. She knew this wasn't the first time. And now, for the first time, her teacher had to answer for it. Lebron turned back to his phone. Yes, I'm still here, he said. I need you to send someone to room 208 immediately. The teacher here just made a direct racist remark toward a student. Ms. Calloway took a step forward, her voice desperate. Please, Mr. James. I was having a bad day. It came out wrong. Lebron's eyes narrowed. A bad day? He scoffed. Funny, because Maya's had a lot of bad days because of you. And no one made excuses for her. A silence hung in the air. The other students shifted uncomfortably, realizing the truth in his words. Maya had spent years biting her tongue, pretending the little comments didn't hurt, pretending the unfair grades weren't on purpose, pretending she didn't notice how Ms. Calloway only called on certain kids and only encouraged certain students. Now everyone saw it. Everyone knew. And Ms. Calloway was crumbling under the weight of her own actions. Lebron ended the call and slipped his phone into his pocket. They're on their way, he said simply. Ms. Calloway let out a shaky breath, her hands trembling. Please, don't ruin my career over this, she whispered. It was just one mistake. Lebron tilted his head. Was it? Before she could answer, the classroom door burst open. The principal, Mr. Reynolds, stormed inside, followed by two other staff members. His eyes darted between Ms. Calloway, Lebron, and Maya. What's going on here? Lebron folded his arms. Ask her, he said, nodding toward Ms. Calloway. Mr. Reynolds turned to her, his expression unreadable. Ms. Calloway's face twisted with panic. She opened her mouth to speak. But before she could, Jacob, one of Maya's classmates, shot to his feet. She told Maya she'd never be great, he blurted out. She said kids like her don't belong anywhere else. Another student stood up. She's been treating Maya unfairly all year. A third chimed in. She's always picking on her. One by one, the students started talking. Some hesitated, afraid, but once the truth started pouring out, it wouldn't stop. Mr. Reynolds' face darkened. He turned back to Ms. Calloway. Is this true? Ms. Calloway's hands clenched into fists. They're exaggerating, she shrieked. I never. Maya stood up. She had been quiet long enough. Then why did you say I don't belong? Her voice was steady, stronger than she expected. Why did you say people like me don't get anywhere in life? Ms. Calloway's lips parted, but nothing came out. She had no defense. Mr. Reynolds sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Ms. Calloway, he said slowly, you do realize LeBron James has been standing here this whole time, right? Ms. Calloway's body stiffened. Mr. Reynolds shook his head. I want you in my office. Now. No, wait, she pleaded. Mr. Reynolds, I said now. His voice was sharp, leaving no room for argument. Ms. Calloway's shoulders slumped, defeated. The students watched in silence as she slowly gathered her things, her hands trembling. For the first time, she wasn't the one with all the power. As she turned to leave, she locked eyes with Maya. For a second, Maya expected her to say something. An apology, a final insult, something. But she didn't. She just looked away and walked out the door. The second she was gone, the classroom erupted. Oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. Did that really just happen? Maya, however, was still staring at the door. She should have felt happy. She should have felt victorious. But instead, she just felt numb. Lebron placed a hand on her shoulder. You okay? Maya hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, she said softly. I think so. Lebron gave her a small smile. Good. 'Cause we're not done yet. Maya frowned. What do you mean? Lebron's eyes darkened. Miss Calloway was just one teacher, he said. But how many other kids go through this? How many times has this happened? And no one spoke up. Maya swallowed. She knew the answer. Then what do we do? She asked. Lebron's expression hardened. We changed the system. The room was still buzzing with whispers as Maya sat back down. Her mind was racing. Miss Calloway was gone. Really gone. But Lebron's words kept ringing in her ears. Miss Calloway was just one teacher, but how many other kids go through this? Maya had never thought about that before. She had been so focused on surviving her own battles that she never considered how many other kids were facing the same thing. Lebron sat on the edge of her desk, arms crossed. Maya, you got two choices right now, he said. You can move on, forget this happened, or you could do something about it. Maya blinked. What do you mean? Lebron leaned in slightly. You got a voice, kid. You can use it. The other students were listening now, their eyes bouncing between Maya and Lebron. Even the ones who had never spoken to Maya before were suddenly paying attention. Maya hesitated. I don't know what I can do. Lebron smirked. Well, let's start with this. He pulled out his phone and held it up. This whole situation, it's not staying in this classroom. We're going to make sure the whole world hears about it. Maya's eyes widened. Wait, you mean? Lebron nodded. I'm posting about this. A ripple of excitement ran through the students. LeBron James, posting about their school. But that's not all, LeBron continued. This ain't just about exposing one bad teacher. It's about making sure kids like Maya don't ever have to sit in a classroom and feel like they don't belong. Maya's stomach flipped. It felt huge. It was huge. LeBron glanced at Mr. Reynolds. So what's the plan, Principal? Mr. Reynolds, who had been silent since Ms. Calloway left, straightened up. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. Well, he said slowly, this is definitely going to the school board. Ms. Calloway will be under investigation immediately. LeBron nodded. That's a start, but it's not enough. Mr. Reynolds frowned. What do you mean? LeBron said that there's probably other teachers like her. Maybe not as obvious, but they're out there. And we need to make sure that when kids walk into this school, they know they're being treated fairly. No matter what. Maya felt a jolt of something. Hope? Excitement? For the first time in a long time, she felt like things might actually change. Mr. Reynolds sighed. You're right. He glanced around at the students. If any of you have ever felt like you've been treated unfairly, any of you, I want to know about it. At first, no one spoke. Then, slowly, one student raised their hand. Then another, and another. Maya's heart pounded. She wasn't alone. This wasn't just about her. LeBron smiled. Good, he said. Because this is just the beginning. Maya exhaled, a small smile creeping on her face. She had always thought standing up for herself would be impossible, that no one would listen. But now everyone was listening. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid to speak.